"Sir, could you pretend to be my daddy? Just for one day?" The voice was soft, but it cut through the winter air like a siren. Marcus Ellis stopped mid-step, his leather shoes halting on the salted pavement outside the Leclerc Café. He turned, unsure he'd heard, correctly unsure, even, that the voice was real. And there she was. A little girl, no more than 6, stood at the edge of the cafe doorway. Her hair was coiled into 2 tight braids, one ribbon half loose. A red backpack, slightly frayed, was slung over one shoulder. Her gloves, blue and fuzzy, didn't match, but it wasn't her clothes that caught him. It was her eyes, big, brown, wet with something between hope and heartbreak. Marcus blinked. "What did you say?" She stepped closer, her breath coming out in misty puffs. "Just one day. At my school tomorrow, they're having a daddy day. Everyone's bringing their dads. I don't have one, but I saw you, and I thought, maybe you could come. Just pretend. One day. Please?" It hit him hard like a punch through his overcoat straight to the chest. For a second, he couldn't breathe. He looked away, trying to collect himself, and caught sight of her backpack again. It was the same color as the one Jacob had begged for at age 6. The straps frayed in the same place. And those gloves, those mismatched gloves, Jacob used to do the same thing, always losing one, claiming it made him look like a cool astronaut. And then she said it, softly, "You look like a dad who knows how to fix broken things." And just like that, a small hand and a few simple words helped a man who thought he'd forgotten how to feel, learn to love again. What did this moment mean to you? Was there a line in this story that stopped you in your tracks? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share them with us in the comments below. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to join us for more heartfelt, inspiring stories that speak to the soul. And if this story touched you, give it a like. That small gesture helps us bring these messages to even more people. His heart stopped. That's exactly what Jacob used to say whenever he broke a toy or scraped a knee. "Daddy, you know how to fix broken things." Marcus's throat tightened. He hadn't heard that phrase in over a decade, not since the accident, not since the laughter in his house had been replaced by silence. But his body responded faster than his mind. "I'm sorry," he said, pulling back. "I don't think." The girl's eyes clouded instantly. She dropped her head, a tremble in her lip. "Okay," she whispered. "I thought, maybe," and she turned away. She didn't cry loudly, but her shoulders hunched as she walked, small boots in the snow, quiet defeat. It was the kind of sadness that didn't scream it, whispered its way under your ribs. "Wait," Marcus said, louder than he meant. She froze mid-step. He took 2 strides forward, his voice now low but steady. "What's your name?" "Lila," she sniffled without turning. "Lila White." A soft voice chimed in from nearby. An older woman by the cafe window had been watching the entire exchange. She sipped her coffee, eyes wise, and said to no one in particular, "That little girl's got something special, some kind of light." Marcus stared at the woman, then at Lila, and just then, a woman rushed over messy bun, coat too thin for the weather, eyes tired from more than lack of sleep. "Lila, sweetheart, we've talked about this." She glanced up at Marcus, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment and cold. "I'm so sorry, sir. She's been dreaming of this day for weeks. We didn't think she'd actually ask anyone." Angela White. He remembered her name now. Years ago, she'd worked with one of the library programs his firm donated to. Single mother, sharp mind, quiet dignity, and now worn down. There was a slight limp in her step. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her knuckles chapped raw. It wasn't just the cold. It was the kind of fatigue that burrowed deep, emotional, not physical. "She meant no harm," Angela added quickly. "We'll go." Marcus looked at Angela, at Lila, then down at his own gloved hands. He was a man used to writing checks, not showing up. A man who'd built a wall of appointments and boardrooms between himself and grief. But then he imagined walking away, going home to his penthouse and drinking scotch alone while this little girl sat in a classroom tomorrow, with an empty chair beside her. "I'll do it," he said, before he could stop himself. Angela blinked. "What?" "I said I'll come," Marcus repeated, clearing his throat. "Tomorrow. What time?" Lila's face lit up so fast it nearly broke him. 8:15, she beamed. "At the south entrance. I'll be wearing my sparkly sneakers." Marcus chuckled something he hadn't done in a long time. Sparkly sneakers. Got it. Angela hesitated. Are you sure? You don't even know us. I know enough, Marcus said, then glanced toward the cafe window, where the older woman still watched, smiling. Angela opened her mouth as if to protest, then simply nodded. Thank you. For real. Lila stepped forward and slipped her tiny hand into his gloved one. You'll be great, you know, she said. He smiled down at her, heart pounding strangely. You think so? She nodded. You look like someone who knows how to fix broken things. That line again. And this time, he didn't flinch. He just held her hand a moment longer and thought, maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. Marcus didn't sleep much that night. The city outside buzzed like it always did, sirens, engines, the low hum of a never-sleeping beast. But inside his penthouse, it was too quiet. Too still. He poured himself a small glass of bourbon, turned off the news, and stood by the window, watching the soft snow settle on the streets far below. In his mind, he kept seeing her face Lila with, her hopeful eyes and that line that pierced deeper than she could have known. You look like someone who knows how to fix broken things. How could she have known Jacob used to say that very same thing? Marcus turned from the window and crossed to a closet he rarely opened. Inside, behind winter coats and golf clubs he hadn't touched in years, sat an old box. He pulled it out, dusted the lid, and opened it slowly. Inside, a pair of tiny sneakers with worn soles, a faded drawing of a stick figure family, and a blue glove, only one. Jacob always lost the second. A single tear slid down Marcus's cheek before he could stop it. The next morning, Marcus dressed with care. Navy wool coat, fresh scarf, but something in his heart felt exposed, raw like the wind outside. As he walked to the south entrance of PS 212, he saw a line of dads and daughters, most laughing, some awkwardly fixing pigtails or holding pink backpacks. Lila spotted him first. She broke into a run, waving wildly, sparkly sneakers catching the morning sun. You came, she cried, grabbing his hand like they'd known each other forever. Of course, Marcus said, the corners of his mouth softening. I gave my word. Angela approached more slowly. She wore a second-hand coat again, but this one had been brushed clean. Her hair was tidier, though her eyes still held that quiet wariness of someone used to doing life alone. Mr. Ellis, she said formally, thank you again. Call me Marcus, he replied, and it's my honor. A staff member greeted them at the doors and handed Marcus a sticker. Dad for a day. Guest. He stuck it on his chest and followed Leela into the classroom, where little chairs and colorful posters filled the space. The teacher, Miss Delaney, smiled warmly but raised an eyebrow when she saw Marcus. Lila, is this your father? She asked gently. Marcus didn't flinch. He'd prepped for this. I'm a friend of the family, here for today. Lila beamed up at him. He's my borrowed dad, she whispered proudly. The morning unfolded with chaotic charm, Lila showing him her art folder, introducing him to her classmates, and reading a story aloud about a tree that gave everything for a little boy. Marcus sat cross-legged on the floor, knees protesting, but heart strangely light. During snack time, he slipped outside the classroom to grab coffee from a vending machine. In the hallway, he found Angela seated on a bench, staring out the window. You didn't have to stay, she said as he approached. I wanted to, he replied, handing her a cup of coffee. She took it, her hands wrapping around the warmth like a lifeline. Most men would have smiled politely and walked away. Most men haven't lost what I've lost, Marcus said softly. Angela looked at him then. Really looked. A child? He nodded. Jacob. 10 years ago. Drunk driver. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I never thought I'd step into a school again, he admitted. But something about your daughter. Angela smiled faintly. She does that. She sees holes and tries to fill them, even when it's not her job. Marcus studied her profile. There were soft lines of tiredness etched into her face, but also quiet strength. She's lucky to have you. Angela gave a humorless laugh. Some days I wonder if I'm doing any of it right. I work late, miss bedtime, patch up clothes with duct tape. I'm not winning any parenting awards. You're present. That's more than most, Marcus said. They sat in silence for a moment, the hum of classroom doors opening and closing around them. Then Angela said, You know what she told me last night? She said, "Mommy, I think he's sad like me." Marcus felt his throat tighten. She's not wrong. Neither are you, Angela said, glancing down at her chipped nails. You fixed something this morning, even if it's just one day. He nodded slowly, unsure what to say. Just then, a janitor walked by, pushing a cart. He looked at Marcus, then back at Angela and Lila inside the class. That little girl, he said, half smiling. She's got magic in her. Saw her help a boy with autism last week, sat beside him until he stopped crying. Never seen anything like it. Angela's eyes welled up. Marcus just nodded. Back inside, Lila was wrapping up her drawing of her borrowed dad. She held it up proudly. It was messy, colorful, and unmistakably her. She'd drawn a big man with a bright smile, holding hands with a tiny girl in sparkly shoes. Is that me? Marcus asked, kneeling beside her. Yep, Lila said, and I made sure to give you the right shoes this time. Marcus laughed a real, unguarded laugh and ruffled her hair. As they left the school that afternoon, Lila clutched Marcus's hand tightly. Thank you for today, she said. It's the best day I've ever had. It's the best day I've had in a long time too, he whispered back. Angela looked over, her eyes softening, and Marcus felt something shift in him. Maybe it was the way Lila leaned into his coat. Maybe it was the way the snow began to fall again, gentle and forgiving. Maybe, just maybe, one day didn't have to be the end. It could be the beginning. The ride to Angela's apartment was quiet, not out of discomfort but something gentler like the hush that follows a prayer. Lila sat in the back seat of Marcus's sleek black SUV, swinging her legs and humming a tune only she knew. Every so often, she'd glance at Marcus in the rearview mirror and smile. Angela sat up front, eyes heavy from the long day, but there was a calmness to her posture now, like she could finally exhale. Marcus pulled into a modest apartment complex on the edge of Harlem. The building had clearly seen better days. Faded bricks, an aging awning, but there were flower pots in the window, toys neatly lined by the stoop, and children's laughter faint in the distance. Life was here. Angela thanked him and unbuckled her seatbelt. Would you like to come up? It's just spaghetti, nothing fancy. Marcus hesitated. In his world, dinner usually involved white tablecloths, waiters in suits, and an overpriced bottle of wine. But this invitation felt like something deeper. He looked at Lila, who was now staring at him with pleading eyes. Only if I can help with the dishes, he said. Angela smiled. Deal. Their apartment was small but warm, the kind of place where each corner told a story. A bookshelf lined with borrowed library books, a drawing of Lila and Angela on the fridge, held up by a cracked magnet, a patch on the couch where the fabric had been resewn by hand. Marcus stood near the door, taking it all in, while Lila darted into her room to change. Angela motioned toward the kitchen. Make yourself at home. I'm sorry it's a bit tight. It's more home than most penthouses, Marcus replied honestly. Dinner was simple spaghetti, garlic bread from day-old baguette, and a salad that Lila had proudly prepared with a dull plastic knife. They sat at a small round table barely big enough for three, but somehow it felt right. Lila did most of the talking about her school, her favorite books, the girl in her class who wore the same socks every day. Angela interjected occasionally, but mostly, she watched. Not just her daughter, but Marcus too. There was something in his eyes, maybe sorrow, maybe hope, but also something she hadn't expected. Gentleness. When dinner ended, Lila disappeared to her room again, returning moments later with a stack of photographs and a shoebox. I want to show you something, she told Marcus, crawling onto the couch beside him. This is my memory box. Inside were pictures of her as a baby, a faded hospital bracelet, a card with a lopsided heart that read, "To Mommy," and then, carefully wrapped in tissue, a tiny wooden airplane with a broken wing. That was my real daddy's, Lila said, quietly. He made it in high school woodshop. Angela stiffened. Lila, but Marcus raised a hand gently. It's okay. He died when I was a baby. I don't remember him, but Mommy says he loved me a lot. She looked up. Do you think you can love someone you never really knew? Marcus paused, his throat tight. I think sometimes the heart remembers what the mind forgets. Angela's eyes glistened. Lila grinned and nestled closer to him. After she went to bed, Marcus helped Angela clear the table. He washed. She dried. It was a rhythm neither of them had practiced, yet it flowed with unexpected ease. "I hope she didn't overwhelm you," Angela said softly. "She's remarkable," Marcus said, drying his hands. "And so are you." Angela shook her head. "I'm just surviving, Marcus. Barely making rent, juggling jobs, praying she doesn't notice when I skip dinner." "She notices," he said. "But what she sees isn't the struggle, it's the love." Angela leaned back against the counter, arms folded. "Why did you say yes yesterday, when she asked?" He took a moment, then met her eyes. "Because she reminded me of someone, and because I needed to be reminded that there's still good I can do." Angela held his gaze for a moment longer, then nodded. "Well, you did. You gave her something she'll never forget." Marcus looked toward Lila's room. The door was slightly ajar, a soft glow of nightlight peeking through. "It wasn't just for her," he said. Later, when Marcus stood at the door, ready to leave, Lila emerged in her pajamas, eyes sleepy but determined. "Wait," she said, holding something behind her back. She stepped forward and handed him the wooden airplane. "I want you to keep it, just for a little while, so you don't forget me." Marcus knelt to her level, overwhelmed. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "You fixed something today, not the wing, but here." She touched her chest. His voice was hoarse. "Thank you, Lila. I won't forget." As he stepped into the night air, snow had begun to fall again, soft and slow. He looked down at the small airplane in his hand, its broken wing barely noticeable in the moonlight. Just one day, he thought, but something told him that promise had already outgrown its deadline. Sunday morning broke with a hesitant sun, weak and pale against the Manhattan skyline. Marcus woke earlier than usual. The wooden airplane sat on his nightstand, catching the first light through the blinds. He had barely slept, and yet he felt more rested than he had in months, maybe years. He held the tiny relic in his hand, tracing the worn edges of its wing. Jacob had once painted a plane just like it. Red body, white stripe. Marcus could still remember the smell of glue, the proud grin on his boy's face. Lila's voice echoed again in his mind. "You fixed something today. That wasn't the kind of thing you just walked away from." Around 10, his phone vibrated with a message. Unknown number. "Hi, it's Angela. I hope this isn't intrusive. Lila's asking if you're busy today. She wants to show you something. No pressure." Marcus stared at the message for a long beat before replying. "I'd love to." They met at the Harlem Public Library. Angela had suggested it because Lila loved the children's reading corner there, and she was right. When Marcus arrived, Lila was sitting cross-legged beneath a mural of cartoon animals, reading aloud to a much younger boy who listened with wide eyes. Her voice was expressive, animated, and filled with warmth. It reminded him of the way Jacob used to read to the family dog, pretending the beagle could understand. Angela appeared from the stacks, holding 2 books under her arm. She looked better rested today, though the wear of responsibility still lingered in her expression. "I swear, she practically lives here," she said, nodding toward Lila. "She's a natural storyteller," Marcus replied. "That's a gift." Angela smiled. "I think it's her way of making the world less lonely." They sat down together on a bench near the window, a quiet pocket of peace amid the laughter of children and the rustling of pages. "Thank you for yesterday," Angela said after a moment. "It meant more than you know." Marcus nodded, watching Lila as she handed the book to the boy and gave him a high five. "I meant it when I said it wasn't just for her. I've spent a long time walking around with a closed heart. That little girl cracked it open in less than a day." "Huh." Angela looked at him carefully. "What happened to your son? I can't imagine." "You shouldn't have to," he said gently. "It's a hole nothing fills. But yesterday, with Lila, I remembered what it felt like to matter to someone small and innocent. That doesn't go away. It just gets buried." Angela swallowed hard, blinking fast. "You mattered to her the moment you said yes. That's not small." Lila ran up to them then, holding a paper flyer. "Look, there's a winter fair at the park. Can we go, please?" Angela hesitated, clearly weighing money and time, but Marcus smiled. "I think we can manage that." The fair was modest, a local fundraiser in Marcus Garvey Park. There were booths with homemade crafts, food trucks selling hot cocoa and pretzels, and a carousel that creaked with every rotation, but kept spinning faithfully. Lila squealed with delight at every station. Marcus bought her a knit hat with cat ears, and she insisted on wearing it immediately. Angela watched from a bench, sipping cocoa. "You're good with her," she said as Marcus joined her after Lila darted off to the craft tent. "I had practice," he said, "but it's been a long time. Do you ever wish you could start over?" He turned to her. "Every day." She nodded slowly. "Me too. Some nights when I'm staring at the ceiling, I think about the life I thought I'd have, and then I hear her breathing in the next room, and I think, maybe this isn't a failure. Maybe it's just a different kind of story." Marcus reached out without thinking, resting his hand over hers on the bench. "It's a good story," he said. "It just needs a few chapters rewritten." Angela looked down at their hands, then up at him, her expression unreadable but open. "You're dangerous, Marcus Ellis." He chuckled. "Only to close doors." That evening, they walked home together, Lila asleep in Marcus's arms. Her head rested against his shoulder, mouth slightly open, the kind of deep sleep only children knew. Angela unlocked the apartment, holding the door as Marcus carried her daughter inside. He laid her gently on the bed, pulling the blanket over her, careful not to wake her. Angela stood in the doorway, arms crossed, heart full. "Would you like to stay for tea?" she asked. Marcus hesitated just a second, then nodded. "I'd like that." They sat at the tiny kitchen table again, this time in comfortable silence. The tea steamed between them, and the snow began to fall outside once more. It wasn't thick, just a quiet drift, like the world was catching its breath. Angela looked at him, eyes softer now, voice barely above a whisper. "What happens when one day turns into more?" Marcus met her gaze. "Then we stop pretending." And in that moment, surrounded by chipped mugs and childlike drawings, Marcus Ellis realized he wasn't visiting a life. He was being invited into one he hadn't dared hope for, not until now. The following week brought a kind of fragile rhythm. Marcus found himself checking his phone more often sometimes just to reread Angela's messages, short and practical, yet holding warmth between the words. He picked Lila up from school twice, once helping her with a science project made entirely of straws and tape. Angela insisted it was temporary, that she didn't want to impose. But with each shared dinner, each storytime voice he did his best to mimic, Marcus felt a tether tightening one he hadn't expected and didn't know how to undo. Until the whispers started. It began as a passing comment at the grocery store. An older woman Marcus vaguely recognized from the community board asked, "So, you're the new father?" with a smirk that didn't quite reach her eyes. He brushed it off. Harlem was a neighborhood built on gossip, but it didn't stop there. Then came the photo. Someone had taken a picture of him and Lila at the winter fair, the two of them laughing as she perched on his shoulders, her cat-eared hat slightly askew. It was sweet, innocent, but it appeared online with a headline that made his stomach knot. "Powerful CEO's secret family?" It was nothing more than local blog fodder. But in Marcus's world, perception mattered. He stared at the screen in his office, his jaw tight, fingers clenched on the mouse. He wasn't ashamed of Lila or Angela, far from it. But the idea that people were twisting something tender into something scandalous set his blood simmering. By Wednesday, it reached Angela. She called while he was between meetings. Her voice was sharp, urgent. "Marcus, we need to talk." He canceled his next appointment and drove straight to the library, where Angela met him out front, holding her coat closed with one hand, the other gripping her phone. "Have you seen this?" she asked, holding up the screen. "I have," Marcus said quietly. "They're dragging my name. People are saying I'm using you for money, that I planted Lila to get close to you." Marcus's chest tightened. "That's insane." Angela's voice cracked. "It doesn't matter. Perception matters. My boss saw it. Gregory." "Gregory Sloan?" Marcus's tone sharpened. "The board trustee?" She nodded. "He's threatening to suspend me. Says the library can't afford scandal." Marcus exhaled, fighting the urge to curse aloud. "That man is a relic. He's powerful," Angela cut in. "And he's using this as leverage." "For what?" She hesitated. "Custody. His wife Evelyn is Lila's godmother. They've been pressuring me for months, saying I'm not fit, that she'd be better off with them." The words struck Marcus like a punch to the gut. They can't be serious. They have money, connections. They're framing this like I'm unstable, that I'm dragging my daughter into some tabloid circus. Her voice broke, just slightly. I've worked so hard to protect her. Marcus stepped forward, lowering his voice. You've done everything right. You're a good mother, Angela. But that might not be enough, she whispered. For the first time, Marcus saw her crack not crumble, just crack. The weight of being strong for too long, of defending against a world always questioning her worth. He reached out, gently touching her arm. Then let me help. Angela pulled back. That's exactly what they want to see. That I'm leaning on a man. That I can't stand on my own. This isn't about pride. This is about protecting Lila. I know, she said, her eyes suddenly fierce. Which is why I can't let this continue. Not the dinners. Not the sleepovers. Not the photo ops. You have to walk away. The words cut deeper than she likely intended. Marcus stared at her, silent. Angela softened. I'm not saying forever. Just until it dies down. He nodded slowly. If that's what you need. She turned, her voice quieter now. I just need to keep her safe. As Marcus watched her walk back into the library, a sinking feeling settled in his chest, not of rejection, but of inevitability. That sometimes, the people who need love the most are the ones who feel they must reject it. He got into his car and sat still, hands on the wheel, the city moving past his windows like a river he couldn't stop. Later that night, alone in his apartment, he pulled the wooden airplane from its spot on the shelf. He turned it in his hands, remembering the weight of Lila's head against his shoulder, the pride in her eyes when he read the bedtime story just right. He thought about Angela, standing alone in the cold, facing the storm like she always did, with grace and pain and fire. He knew then, walking away wasn't the end of the story. It was just the first real test of what this connection meant, and he wasn't going to let them face it alone, not if he had anything to say about it. Angela sat in the stiff leather chair of the family court lobby, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The fluorescent lights above hummed a sterile rhythm, casting the walls in a dull yellow. Her lawyer, a tired public defender with too many files and not enough time, sat beside her flipping through paperwork, lips pursed. Across the room, Evelyn Sloan sat ramrod straight in a tailored gray coat, her husband Gregory whispering into her ear like a campaign manager before a press conference. The contrast was painful. Lila sat between Angela and her attorney, coloring quietly on the court-provided sketchpad. She hummed to herself, oblivious mercifully Soto the tension that thickened the air like smoke. Angela glanced at her daughter, then at the Sloans. Her stomach turned. Gregory caught her eye and gave her a slight nod, more smug than polite. Angela turned away. The petition to challenge her sole guardianship had been filed just 2 days ago. Evelyn claimed concern for Lila's well-being, citing instability at home, financial insecurity, and now with a certain glee Angela's unseemly relationship with a high-profile executive, as if Marcus's presence was a threat rather than a lifeline. Angela's lawyer leaned over. We'll push for a delay. You're entitled to a hearing, and I don't think they're ready with solid evidence yet. Angela nodded, though her body felt frozen. At that moment, the courtroom door opened, and the bailiff called out, "Case of Sloan v. White." She stood, heart pounding. Inside the courtroom, the judge, a middle-aged black woman with eyes that had clearly seen decades of family implosion, seed the documents handed to her. "Miss White," she said without looking up, "you are contesting the petition for temporary guardianship." "Yes, Your Honor," Angela said firmly. Gregory stood as Evelyn remained seated, playing the picture of dignified concern. "Your Honor, we are not seeking to strip Miss White of her rights," he said smoothly. "We only request temporary oversight to ensure the child is protected from potential media exploitation and emotional instability." Angela's hands clenched. "And you believe placing the child in your home achieves that?" the judge asked. "My wife and I offer stability. We are long-standing contributors to the community, and we have resources Miss White cannot match." Before Angela could respond, the door creaked open at the back of the courtroom. Heads turned. Marcus Ellis walked in, not in a suit, not with a lawyer, just in a dark sweater and coat, holding a file in one hand and quiet conviction in the other. The judge raised an eyebrow. And you are? He stepped forward. Marcus Ellis, Your Honor. I have a statement relevant to this hearing. Gregory scoffed. Your Honor, this is irregular. I'll allow it, the judge said, motioning him forward. Angela stared in disbelief as Marcus approached the front, placing the file gently on the clerk's desk. Inside is evidence that Mr. and Mrs. Sloan have been orchestrating a smear campaign against Miss White, Marcus said calmly, including false tips to the media and payment to a local blogger to publish a fabricated story about me and Miss White. The judge looked up sharply. Do you have proof of that? Yes, ma'am. Emails, bank transfers, and a signed affidavit from the blogger. He came forward when I confronted him with legal action. Gregory's face drained of color. Angela was frozen, not just in surprise but in awe. He had believed her. He had fought for her, without asking. Marcus continued. Miss White has never used me, nor has she put her daughter in any exploitative situation. I've been in their lives because I wanted to be, because they welcomed me, and because Lila, his voice caught briefly, deserves to be surrounded by people who love her, not manipulated by those who see her as a trophy. There was a silence so complete, it rang. The judge sat back in her chair. I'll be reviewing this evidence thoroughly before making any determination. Until then, all current custodial rights remain with Miss White. Court adjourned. The gavel hit. Gregory turned sharply to Evelyn, whispering furiously. Angela could see the cracks forming how their polished facade was beginning to crumble. Marcus turned to her, uncertain. I hope I didn't overstep. Angela stared at him, eyes shining. You did exactly what needed to be done. Lila came bounding over from the bench, where a bailiff had kept her busy with stickers. Are we going home now? Angela knelt beside her, brushing a hand through her hair. Yes, baby, we are. As they walked out together, Gregory called after them. This isn't over. Angela didn't turn around. Maybe not, she said. But it's not yours to end. Outside, the cold air bit at their cheeks. Marcus walked beside them, quiet, respectful. When they reached the sidewalk, Angela stopped. Why did you do that? She asked softly. Because no one should have to fight alone, Marcus replied. She nodded. Then, after a pause, added, Come by for dinner tonight. He looked at her, unsure. Are you sure? I'm sure of very few things these days, she said. But that? Yes. And as they turned the corner, Lila skipping ahead, Marcus knew this fight was only beginning. But they were no longer fighting it alone. It had been a week since the courtroom clash, and things on the surface seemed calmer. Angela was back at work, the hearing temporarily adjourned, and the smear campaign had halted once Marcus's legal team sent cease and desist letters to the involved parties. But beneath the quiet tension brewed like a storm crouched low behind the horizon. Angela stood alone in the kitchen, rinsing dishes from dinner. Lila was in her room finishing homework, humming a song about the moon and stars. Marcus had stayed for the meal again, laughing at Lila's jokes and helping her with fractions. But now he was gone, and the house felt still in his absence. Angela stared into the sink, her hands under warm water, but her mind far away. She was grateful for Marcus, more than she could admit aloud, and yet she felt afraid. Not of him, but of what she was becoming with him in their lives. Dependent, soft, hopeful. Those were luxuries she'd stopped allowing herself years ago. When the doorbell rang, her heart jumped. Wiping her hands quickly, she opened the door to find a courier holding an envelope. She signed, thanked him, and closed the door. Her name was printed in clean black ink across the front. No return address. Inside, a single photograph. Lila and Marcus at the fair, their smiles radiant. And behind it, a typed note. You should be more careful who you let near your daughter. Some shadows wear nice suits. Angela's breath caught. She dropped the paper and backed away. For a moment, the world tilted. The threat wasn't direct, but the implication was clear. Someone was watching. Someone still wanted control. And now they were playing psychological games. She locked the door, drew the blinds, and sat down, trying to still her shaking hands. She knew exactly who had sent it. Gregory, or Evelyn. Maybe both. It didn't matter. The message had been received. Angela didn't sleep that night. When she walked Lila to school the next morning, she looked twice at every passing car. She watched the eyes of strangers more carefully. And when Marcus called, she didn't answer. By the third day, Marcus showed up at the library. Angela was at the checkout desk, dressed in one of her older cardigans, hair tied back, eyes sunken from restless nights. "Hey," he said softly. She glanced up, startled, then tried to compose herself. "Hi, are you okay? I've been trying to reach you." She hesitated. "I've just been busy." Marcus frowned. "Angela, talk to me." She motioned toward the break room. Inside, she closed the door and faced him, arms crossed like a shield. "I got a threat," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus stiffened. "What kind of threat?" She pulled out the photo and note from her bag, unfolded it with trembling fingers. Marcus read it, jaw tightening. "I'll handle this," he said immediately. "No," she cut in sharp. "You don't get to swoop in again. Not this time." He looked at her, hurt flickering across his face. "I'm trying to protect you." "I know," she said, softer now. "But you can't be our savior every time. That's not sustainable. And it's not safe for you, for Lila, for any of us." Marcus took a breath. "Then what are you saying?" Angela hesitated. Her voice broke. "I'm saying, I need you to step back." His brow furrowed. "Angela, I can't let them use you to take her from me," she said. "I can't give them more ammunition. If you stay, they'll twist everything we are into something ugly, again. And if I go," he said, "what happens to Lila, to us?" Angela looked away, eyes brimming. "She's resilient. She'll forget." "She won't," he said gently. "And neither will I." She wiped at her cheek, cursing herself for crying. "Please, Marcus, just give me space. Let me fight this one on my own." He stood still for a long moment, then nodded. "If that's what you want." She didn't answer. He left without another word. That night, Lila noticed the silence. "Is Mr. Marcus coming tomorrow?" Angela hesitated. "No, sweetheart. Not for a little while." Lila looked down at her, drawing another picture of them all together. "Did he stop loving us?" "No," Angela said, pulling her close. "He's just being careful." Lila whispered, "I miss him already." "I know, baby," Angela said. "Me too." Meanwhile, Marcus sat alone in his office. Lights dimmed, the city glittering cold and distant beyond the glass. The wooden airplane sat on his desk, untouched since the hearing. His hands hovered over it, then withdrew. He was trying to do the right thing, but the right thing didn't always feel right. Not when you loved someone who believed they had to carry everything alone. Not when stepping back felt like abandonment. Not when silence was the new form of war. The days grew shorter, and winter deepened. Snow clung to curbs like forgotten promises, and the air took on a brittle stillness that seemed to echo Angela's mood. The silence from Marcus stretched longer than she'd expected. It was what she asked for, but not what she wanted. Every night, Lila asked less and less about him. Her voice lost that hopeful rise at the end of each question. "Is he coming tomorrow?" became, "He's probably busy." And then, silence. That hurt most of all. Angela sat in the kitchen one evening, sipping cold tea, staring at the crooked magnet on the fridge. The drawing beneath it, Lila, Angela, and Marcus holding hands remained. Lila hadn't removed it. She had simply stopped referencing it, as if her heart knew better than to ask for too much. The phone rang unexpectedly. Angela's heart jumped, hoping. But it was the school. A parent-teacher event was scheduled for Friday family reading night. Parents were encouraged to read aloud in class. Angela smiled tightly, thanked the teacher, and hung up. Another event. Another reminder of what Lila had once called her, almost daddy. She wanted to call him. She nearly did. But instead, she showed up to family reading night with her shoulders squared, hair neatly done, and a voice steady enough to hide the cracks inside. She read, "The Velveteen Rabbit." Lila nestled in her lap, classmates listening wide-eyed. When she got to the part where the rabbit asks, "What is real?" she paused longer than she should have. "It's when someone loves you for a long, long time," she read, her voice soft. "Not just to play with, but really loves you. Then you become real." After the event, as parents filtered out with coats and tired children, Angela lingered by the classroom's bookshelf. The teacher approached Ms. Ramirez, kind and always observant. "You did great," she said gently. "Lila's lucky." Angela smiled. I hope so. Miss Ramirez hesitated. She misses him. Angela stiffened. Misses who? Marcus, she said plainly. She talks about him sometimes. Not a lot. Just enough for us to know he mattered. Angela exhaled. He mattered to both of us. Later that week, Lila had a fever. Nothing serious, just the usual childhood virus, but the kind that demanded soup, cool cloths, and soft lullabies. As Angela sat beside her, wiping sweat from her brow, Lila murmured, half asleep, I dreamt he came back. He brought pancakes. Angela swallowed the lump in her throat. That sounds like a good dream. Lila nodded faintly. He still loves us, right? Angela brushed hair from her forehead. Yes, baby, he does. That night, after Lila drifted into fevered sleep, Angela stood in the living room, holding her phone. Her thumb hovered over Marcus's name, and then she dialed. The line rang once, twice. Angela, he answered. Not a question, a knowing. She's sick, Angela said. It's nothing serious. Just, she called for you in her sleep. A beat of silence. I can come, he said. No, she said quickly, then softened. I just thought you should know. And I wanted to say I'm sorry. Marcus didn't speak. Angela continued, voice quieter now. I pushed you away out of fear, but I see now Lila doesn't need protection from you. She needs your presence. And maybe I do, too. I never left, Marcus said. Not really. Angela closed her eyes. I know. The next morning, someone knocked gently at their door. When Angela opened it, she found a paper bag on the mat. Inside were 3 small container pancakes, cut strawberries, and syrup in a separate little cup. On top, a note in Marcus's handwriting. Real love doesn't walk away. It just waits quietly for the door to open. Angela sat on the steps, the bag in her lap, heart pounding. She didn't know what came next, but she knew this. They weren't broken. They were just paused. And love, the kind that mattered, could survive the quiet between storms. Inside, Lila stirred. Angela rose to meet her, carrying breakfast and maybe something more with her. Marcus stood at the top of the courthouse steps, his breath curling into the gray morning air. The city buzzed beneath a low sky, and the chill in the wind carried more than winter, it carried weight. He adjusted his coat and glanced at the folder under his arm. Inside were documents, transcripts, and an affidavit that could unravel the Sloanes' web of manipulation. It was time. Angela arrived 10 minutes later, Lila holding her hand tightly. The little girl wore her red peacoat and the knit cat-eared hat Marcus had bought her at the winter fair. Her eyes lit up when she saw him. Mr. Marcus, she said, breaking free from Angela's grip and rushing toward him. Marcus knelt, catching her in a hug that drove the air from his chest. Hey, Starshine, he whispered. Miss me? Lila nodded against his shoulder. Mom said you sent pancakes. Angela approached slowly, uncertainty in her eyes. She insisted on coming today. I'm glad, Marcus said, standing. Angela looked him over. You really think you're ready for this? He held up the folder. They crossed the line. It's time we do the same. The hearing began with the usual formalities, names, dates, a quick review of the previous session. Gregory and Evelyn sat smugly at their table, their lawyer oozing confidence as he laid out their case. Angela was unstable, exposed her daughter to unnecessary media attention, and relied too heavily on an outsider with questionable motives. Angela kept her eyes forward. She had rehearsed this moment in her head too many times. She had begged herself not to cry, not to scream, just endure. Then it was Marcus's turn. He rose, calm but firm. The judge invited him to speak. I'm not Lila's biological father, Marcus began, but I have been a father. I know what it means to love someone more than your own breath. I also know what it means to lose that. He paused, letting the silence settle. I met Angela and Lila through chance, but what kept me in their lives wasn't obligation, it was recognition. I saw a mother fighting like hell for her child, and a little girl who wasn't looking for a hero, just someone to show up. He handed the judge the folder. These are transcripts and emails proving that Gregory and Evelyn Sloane paid a blogger to fabricate damaging stories about Angela. There are financial transfers from Evelyn's account, along with an affidavit from the blogger himself. He's willing to testify. Gregory's lawyer stood, flustered. Your Honor, this is circumstantial. The judge held up a hand. Sit down, Mr. Lowell. She flipped through the documents, her brow tightening. Marcus continued. These are not the actions of concerned guardians. These are power plays, attempts to discredit a mother out of pride and control. Angela isn't unfit. She's extraordinary. Angela blinked, lips trembling. Marcus looked at the judge, voice softening. And if the court wants to talk about presence, about real fatherhood, then I'll testify to what I've seen. A child who is thriving, who laughs, who reads, who dreams, because of her mother. And I'll swear under oath that I will be in her life, as long as they'll have me. A hush fell over the courtroom. Lila tugged at Angela's sleeve. Can I say something? Angela froze. Baby, this isn't... But the judge raised her hand. Let the child speak. Lila walked slowly to the front, her small boots clicking against the floor. She faced the judge and took a breath. I want to stay with my mommy. She always tucks me in. She makes the monsters go away. And Marcus makes the best pancakes. He's not my daddy, but he listens like one. He reads with voices. And I love him. But I don't want to go live somewhere with fancy carpets and no hugs. The judge's eyes glistened. Gregory looked away. Angela covered her mouth. Lila turned and walked back to her seat like nothing had happened. The judge leaned forward. I've seen enough. The petition for guardianship is not only denied, it's dismissed with prejudice. Mr. and Mrs. Sloan, I advise you to reconsider your approach to family. Court adjourned. The gavel struck. It was done. Angela sat frozen, not from shock but from something deeper relief. Marcus gently touched her hand, and for once, she didn't pull away. She turned to him. Thank you, she whispered. You don't have to thank me, he said. I just showed up. She nodded slowly, eyes locked with his. Outside, reporters tried to swarm, but Marcus shielded them as they slipped into his SUV. Lila curled up in the back seat, exhausted but peaceful. Angela turned to Marcus as he started the engine. Do you think this is over? No, he said, but it's finally ours to write. And as they pulled away from the courthouse, the city behind them buzzed and blinked like always, but for the first time, they weren't running from it. They were walking into it. Together, the victory in court lingered like the final chord of a powerful song, resonant, but fading. For a while, life returned to a rhythm that felt almost normal. Lila went back to school without whispers behind her back. Angela resumed her duties at the library without sideways glances from coworkers. And Marcus, though still buried in work, found himself carving out more moments for them: dinners, story times, weekend walks in the park. But the quiet didn't last. It began with small things: a cold shoulder from a colleague, a meeting rescheduled without explanation, a canceled interview Marcus had been preparing for weeks. When his assistant finally confessed that donors had expressed concern over his recent personal choices, Marcus felt the sting. They're saying your association with a custody scandal has made some investors cautious, she said carefully. He dismissed it with a calm nod, but inside, something clenched. At home, Angela was also fighting silent battles. The library's funding committee, where Gregory Sloan still held sway, had delayed the release of new grant money. Rumors spread that she had used Marcus to gain attention, that her courtroom win had been manufactured. By the third week, she sat across from Marcus on his apartment balcony, watching the skyline flicker through steam rising from their mugs of tea. They're pushing me out, she said. Marcus looked at her. We can fight it. Angela shook her head. I'm tired, Marcus. Every time we rise, they wait to pull us back down. You're not alone in this, he said. She met his gaze. But I keep wondering, are we hurting each other just by trying to stay together? That sentence hit harder than he expected. You're not hurting me, Marcus said. You've given me something I thought I'd never have again. Angela's eyes welled. You say that, but what if I cost you everything you've rebuilt? Your reputation, your company. I don't care about the company. But you built it. I built it to fill a hole, he snapped, then caught himself, breath trembling. Angela, when I lost Jacob and Dana, I poured myself into walls and numbers in boardrooms, but none of that matters, not like this does. You and Lila, you're not a distraction. You're the reason I remember I'm still human." Angela blinked, then reached across the table, taking his hand. "Then maybe it's not about fighting back. Maybe it's about redefining what winning looks like." He looked at her, the tension between them softening into something unspoken and sacred. The next day, as if summoned by the universe's cruel timing, Marcus received an envelope at his office. No return address. Inside, a grainy photograph of Lila at the playground taken from across the street. No message, no signature, just the image. He froze. It was a threat, masked as surveillance. Angela needed to know. When he arrived at her apartment, she was in the kitchen, making soup while Lila colored at the table. He waited until Lila went to wash her hands before showing Angela the photo. Her face paled. They're watching again. They never stopped. Angela sat down hard in a kitchen chair, her strength seeming to evaporate. "What do they want now? We already won." "Control," Marcus said. "They want to remind us we're never truly safe." Angela looked at him, her voice barely a whisper. "Maybe we should disappear." His jaw clenched. "You mean run?" "I mean, leave this place. Start over, somewhere they can't follow." Marcus exhaled, the weight of that idea both terrifying and tempting. "You'd really go?" "For Lila, yes. For peace, yes. But what about justice?" Angela gave him a sad smile. "Sometimes justice is just the absence of fear." They were quiet for a long time. Then Marcus said, "Let me talk to someone." That night, he drove to a brownstone in Brooklyn, the door creaking open before he even knocked. A woman stood there, older, sharp-eyed, with a strength that didn't fade with age. "May," Marcus said, stepping into the familiar warmth of his mother's house. "I heard about the court win," she said, embracing him. "I also heard about the fallout. I don't know what to do," he admitted. She led him to the kitchen, poured tea like it was medicine. "You do know," she said. "You're just afraid of the cost." He nodded slowly. She looked at him, unflinching. "You already lost once, baby. Don't lose again by being too scared to fight dirty. You know what they're capable of. Time to be more capable." Marcus swallowed. "Angela wants to leave." "Do you?" "I want her safe. I want Lila safe." "Then make the world safe for them. Don't run from the fire. Bring the water." Marcus looked at his mother, a spark igniting behind tired eyes. "You always did believe in impossible things," he said. She smiled. "I still believe in you." The next morning, Marcus made 2 calls onto his legal team, the other to an investigative journalist he once helped during a whistleblower case. If the Sloanes wanted shadows, then fine. But Marcus would drag every shadow into the light. This time, the line wouldn't just be drawn, it would be carved in stone. The story broke at dawn. The headline stretched across digital banners, local news tickers, and morning radio shows. "Harlem philanthropist exposed. Secret efforts to sabotage single mother's custody rights revealed." It was everywhere. Gregory and Evelyn Sloane were splashed across the screen, their stoic faces suddenly symbols of hypocrisy and manipulation. The article laid everything bare: emails, bank statements, anonymous sources. The journalist Marcus contacted had done her homework. The narrative didn't just implicate them in a smear campaign. It painted them as orchestrators of a long-running effort to discredit and dismantle Angela White's life for personal gain. By 8 a.m., Marcus's phone was ringing nonstop. By noon, the library board had suspended Gregory Sloane indefinitely. And by 2 p.m., Evelyn's philanthropic sponsors had pulled out of 2 major fundraising events. But Marcus wasn't watching the chaos unfold from a distance. He was in the courthouse, seated beside Angela, their hands close but not yet touching. The final hearing for permanent custody rights had been moved up due to the revelations. Lila sat quietly in the front row with a school counselor. Her little legs swung beneath the bench, her hands folded in her lap like she understood, on some level, that the adults were playing for keeps. Angela was dressed simply, a dark blue blouse, minimal makeup, eyes clear and determined, but her fingers trembled slightly. Marcus reached over and touched her pinky with his own. "Just enough." The judge entered. Silence followed. "This court has reviewed new evidence submitted this morning," she began, tapping a folder. "The extent of misconduct by the petitioners is alarming." Gregory's attorney stood to object but was quickly shut down. "Gregory and Evelyn, seated beside each other, looked like ghosts of themselves tight-lipped, defeated. Angela stood when called. "Your Honor," she said, her voice steady, "I never asked for any of this. I just wanted to raise my daughter in peace. I fought because I had to. But if you ask Lila what she needs, she'll tell you stability, truth, and love. And she has those. She's always had them." The judge turned to Marcus. "Mr. Ellis, would you like to speak?" He rose slowly. "I'm not her biological father, but in every way that matters, I am something to her. She knows she can rely on me, and I know she has saved me more than I've saved her." A pause. "I didn't come into this family by blood. I came in because I said yes when a little girl asked me to pretend, and I stayed because nothing in my life has ever felt more real." Angela glanced at him, then her eyes glassy, the corner of her mouth trembling just slightly. The judge looked down, then up again. "I see no reason to delay further. Custody remains with Miss White. The court recognizes Mr. Marcus Ellis as a consistent figure in the minor's life. No further petitions will be entertained unless substantial change occurs." Gavel. Silence. It was over. As they stepped out of the courthouse, reporters were everywhere. Marcus slipped an arm protectively around Angela's back. She looked ready to retreat, but then Lila broke free from the counselor and ran forward, launching herself into Marcus's arms. "You came," she whispered into his neck. "Always," he said. Angela stood a few feet away, watching them. Then she stepped closer. One of the reporters called out, "Miss White, do you have a statement?" She turned slowly, her voice strong. "Families aren't always built the traditional way. Ours began with a question, a little bit of faith, and a whole lot of love. That's all anyone needs." She reached out, and Marcus took her hand. Later that evening, in the warm glow of Angela's apartment, they sat together at the kitchen table. Lila was curled on the couch, watching her favorite animated movie. Angela placed something in front of Marcus, a small box. He looked at it, then at her. "I found it in Lila's drawer," she said. "She was saving it for someday." He opened it. Inside was the first photo ever taken of the three of them, Lila's face squished between theirs, a smudge of ice cream on her cheek, and joy in all their eyes. On the back, in childlike handwriting, "To my real family, forever." Marcus blinked hard, fighting the tide inside him. Angela smiled. "She knew before we did." He reached for her hand. "I don't want to pretend anymore." "Then don't," she said, leaning in. And in that kitchen, in the quiet of earned peace, they sealed something sacred, not with papers or courts, but with presence, promise, and love that had fought its way through the fire. Spring arrived quietly that year, sneaking into the city with a softness that New York rarely allowed. The parks began to fill with green, the days lengthened, and laughter returned to stoops and sidewalks like a long-forgotten friend. On a warm Saturday morning, the community library on Lenox Avenue hosted its annual Books and Brunch event, a tradition that Angela had helped start years ago, and now, finally, could enjoy with peace in her heart. Angela stood near the registration table, smiling as kids darted past with paper crowns and juice boxes. Her hair was pulled back, her eyes bright, her presence calm. There was something different about her now, a quiet certainty. She'd faced down storms and found a way through. Across the courtyard, Marcus helped Lila set up a used book donation table. The little girl was wearing a purple t-shirt that read, "Readers are leaders," and a wide-brimmed sun hat she insisted made her look official. "She's got your fire," Marcus said as Angela joined them, watching Lila organize books alphabetically. "She's got your calm," Angela replied, her voice low and fond. Marcus laughed softly. "That's not what my boardroom would say." Angela glanced at him. "Any more fallout from the story?" Some donors pulled back. A few clients looked elsewhere. He shrugged. "But we gained more than we lost." "You sure?" she asked. He turned fully to face her. "Angela, I've spent years chasing success that filled nothing. But you, Lila, this is the first time it's ever meant something." She studied his face, searching for hesitation. There was none. From the main stage, someone tapped the mic. "Next up," the announcer called, "we have a very special guest one of our most generous supporters, and apparently, a pretty decent storyteller. Mr. Marcus